Hey everybody, this is Alvin Louie from Courage is a Habit. This is going to be all offense. This video is going to teach you how to use a tool that most parents don't even know exists, and it's called the Dear Colleague Letters. Before I begin, I want to set a different mindset for everybody. Please stop saying that President Trump is going to fix it. Instead, I want you to say, President Trump is giving us the tools to fix it. The former statement puts you in a spectator mindset. It puts you on the sidelines, waiting, watching for someone else to give you your freedom. The mindset of President Trump is giving us the tools to fix it puts you in an active, proactive mindset. It puts your hands on the wheel. I hope by now that we've all learned the grave mistake of sitting by and not participating in our freedom. Liberty is not a spectator sport. And we are in this position in our country where they're indoctrinating our children, removing children from you. If you don't believe that a boy can be a girl and a girl can be a boy, it's because we've taken our hands off. And so now, yes, what President Trump is doing is amazing. Doge, what they're doing is incredible at the macro level. But if you want to see change at your schools that you and your children can feel, it's going to have to come from you. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to exercise the incredible opportunity we have using tools from President Trump's administration. So let's get into it. All the links to the materials that you'll see is going to be in the thread below. So what is a Dear Colleague letter? Most people don't even know this exists. A Dear Colleague letter is essentially a directive from the Department of Education. Sometimes it's a guideline that financially incentivizes schools to follow certain directives. And if they don't follow it, they're not going to be able to get the federal funding. In this particular case, for this particular video, I'm going to show you two Dear Colleague letters that came out within the last 2 weeks, one on February 4th and one on February 14th. Those Dear Colleague letters were not guidelines or suggestions. They were reminding schools of federal law, and that if you violate those federal laws, that you will lose federal funding. Now, I wanted to make this very clear because a lot of the schools will start to lie to you and say, no, we don't have to follow the executive order. No, we don't have to follow these Dear Colleague letters. They're telling you that because they're scared, because they know that if you do what I'm going to be teaching you to do, that they're in violation of this Dear Colleague letter and these executive orders, and they will lose federal funding. So when they tell you, no, we don't have to do it, and they cite some nonsense laws in the state, is to keep you apathetic and go, okay, I guess there's nothing I can do about it. And that's why they're telling you that, and they're lying to you. The federal law supersedes the state laws. And we're going to show you what these Dear Colleague letters are. More importantly, how to file for a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights and how to get your schools investigated. To give you an idea how powerful the Dear Colleague letters are, this is the same mechanism that the Obama administration used to infuse your schools with restorative justice policies. Now, you might be thinking, well, what if there's a school that doesn't take the federal funding? Then are they going to be, do they have to take these guidelines? Well, there's no such thing as a school that doesn't take federal funding. So let's get that out of the way. But the restorative justice policies was pushed by the Obama administration, and those are the policies that's responsible for all the violence that you see in your schools. I'll provide a link to our explanation of what it is so that you understand what the restorative justice policies are. But I wanted to bring that up to show you how powerful these letters are. But like I said, let me just reiterate, in this particular case, it's not a guideline. They're reminding your schools, whether it's K through 12 or universities, of federal law. And let me say, and I'm going to say this throughout the video, every single one of your schools is in violation because they all have DEI, because they all have social emotional learning. All your K through 12 has social emotional learning. So immediately they're in violation because social emotional learning, it's basically critical race theory. That's all it is. And DEI is the praxis of that. So as soon as your child steps foot into the schools, whether there's a specific lesson or a teacher or not, your entire system is in violation. Now, there's going to be two Dear Colleague letters I'm going to go through. The first one is very short. It's only basically a page and a half, and it's Title IX. It's super simple. So this is the letter from February 4th, the Dear Colleague letter. It's super simple. It basically says schools will no longer abide by the 2024 Title IX ruling that the Biden administration was trying to get through. It essentially says that if your schools started passing policies assuming that Harris was going to win, and they were going by the 2024 Title IX, which basically stripped it and said that boys can be in girls' restrooms and sports, they're in no man's land because they were basing a policy on a federal law that literally doesn't exist and on an administration that no longer exists. So this Dear Colleague letter is reminding all your schools that if they're allowing boys and girls sports and bathrooms, or they're using pronouns and all the transgender language, that they're in violation of the Title IX federal law. All your schools should be going by the 2020 Title IX, which is essentially protecting women and girls and their sports and restrooms and locker rooms. So boys, men, mentally ill men that wants to invade that, if your schools allow it, they're in violation. That's it. That's as simple as that. So this Dear Colleague letter is very short because that's all it is. And then at the end there, they talk about the executive order defending women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal government. It was released on January 20th. It reminds the school that this is the executive order. And any agency that takes federal funding, including all your schools, both K through 12 and colleges, are simply in violation. And it says that the Department of Education and OCR, which is the Office for Civil Rights, must enforce the Title IX consistent with President Trump's order. That means that if you file, they must investigate. They must investigate your schools that are in violation. And all the schools essentially are in violation because they all have transgender ideology. They all keep secrets from parents. They all talk about pronouns. That's it. And we'll show you at the end on how to file. But like I said, I wanted to talk about the two Dear Colleague letters. This one is the shortest one. Again, it'll be linked. So the meat and potatoes is here. The second Dear Colleague letter released on February 14th is about DEI. And that gets into basically your entire system. Whereas the first Dear Colleague letter talks about the transgender ideology that's being pushed in all K through 12, and again, in colleges, of course. But this one here, it's a little bit longer, but it quite literally describes every single school district in all 50 states. I'm going to break down each section of this because it's written so well, and I want to read it. I want to take you through it, and I want to explain to you what it's actually saying. Okay. So the first sentence, it starts off, Dear Colleague, discrimination on the basis of race, color, or national origin is illegal and morally reprehensible. Accordingly, I write to clarify and reaffirm the non-discrimination obligations of schools and other entities that receive federal financial assistance from the United States Department of Education. Okay, and then talk about the Title VI Civil Rights Act of 1964. Because all schools uses social emotional learning, they're immediately in violation because social emotional learning is critical race theory. It's just a delivery system of critical race theory, which is why your schools are all full of equity, anti-white, America's racist, oppressive, that kind of thing. But let's get into the letter so we're more specific. In recent years, American educational institutions have discriminated against students on the basis of race, including white and Asian students, many of who come from disadvantaged backgrounds and low-income families. These institutions embrace of pervasive and repugnant race-based preferences and other forms of racial discrimination have been mandated throughout every facet of academia. This is 100% true. Every facet of K through 12 is filled with this race-based critical race theory ideology. For example, colleges, universities, and the K-12 schools have routinely used race as a factor in admissions, financial aid, hiring, training, and other institutional programming. All your teachers when they do the professional training, it's all based on DEI, it's all based on critical race theory. So this I want to highlight because this is incredibly important for you to understand that this is not a single book or a lesson or a teacher or a counselor. This is your entire system. Now I'm going to break down page 2. Okay, we're going to get down to page 2, and I want to break this up. Educational institutions have toxically indoctrinated students with the false premise that the United States is built upon systemic and structural racism and advanced discriminatory policies and practices. Proponents of these discriminatory practices have attempted to further justify them, particularly during the last 4 years, under the banner of diversity, equity, and inclusion, smuggling racial stereotypes and explicit race consciousness into everyday training, programming, and discipline. This describes all school districts in all 50 states and universities. It is pervasive. It is in your lessons. It's in your flags. It's in your counseling, all your mental health. All the school counselors are trained this way. So anytime your schools talk about mental health, they're in violation of this because all the mental health and it's built upon that. And we'll show you at the end on how to prove it. Students for Fair Admission versus Harvard, or SFFA. And this case, this Supreme Court case, was Asian families suing Harvard because they were not allowing Asian kids who qualify to go to Harvard, as well as a lot of other Ivy Leagues, for more Black and brown students. And they were lowering the standards to let more Black and brown students in. And then so the Asian families fought it all the way up to the Supreme Court. They won. And as an aside, the reason why we no longer have affirmative action in this country is due to this 2023 Supreme Court case. Again, you can read about that on your own, but for the purpose of this conversation and this lesson, the SFFA is referring to this Supreme Court case with the Asian family suing Harvard. Okay, so although SFFA addressed admissions decisions, the Supreme Court's holding applies more broadly. At its core, the test is simple. If an educational institution treats a person of one race differently than it treats another person because of that person's race, the educational institution violates the law. Federal law thus prohibits covered entities from using race in decisions pertaining to admissions, hiring, promotion, compensation, financial aid, scholarship, prizes, administrative support, discipline, housing, graduation ceremony, and all other aspects of student, academic, and campus life. Put simply, educational institutions may neither separate or segregate students based on race, nor distribute benefits or burdens based on race. Once again, this describes 100% of school districts in all 50 states. They all do this, if not all of it, most of it, because of social emotional learning, because of culturally responsive teaching. That's what all the entire system is this. Anybody with children in K through 12 know that they absolutely treat, especially white students, differently because they have to push the idea that there's white supremacy and all those kind of things. There's these struggle sessions, they call them community circles, where they sit around and you have to marginalize people and oppressive groups, and groups need to be seen and heard. All that violates exactly what this Dear Colleague letter is talking about. The law that this Dear Colleague letter is reminding schools you will lose federal funding if you do not stop these policies. And we'll get into the dates and everything. Now, I didn't pull anything out of page 3 because every single paragraph is important, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in instead, and I'm going to take you through each paragraph because I really want you to see the power of this Dear Colleague letter. Your principals and school board members, your chairs will try to downplay this because they're scared of it. They're scared that you know how to use it. And so this is really important that you understand this is what influence and power looks like. Okay, this is what influence and power looks like. So, top of page 3. Relying on non-racial information as a proxy for race and making decisions based on that information violates the law. That is true whether the proxies are used to grant preferences on an individual basis or systemic one. It would, for instance, be unlawful for an educational institution to eliminate standardized testing to achieve a desired racial balance or to increase racial diversity. An example of this would be grading for equity. So if you search your policies in your school and you type in grading for equity, and you see that, or they start eliminating honors classes because there's not enough racial representation. Anything doing representation, belonging, grading for equity, boom, right there. That's what that paragraph's talking about. Other programs discriminate in less direct but equally insidious ways. DEI programs, for example, frequently preference certain racial groups and teach students that certain racial groups bear unique moral burdens that others do not. Such programs stigmatize students who belong to particular racial groups based on crude racial stereotypes. Consequently, they deny students the ability to participate fully in the life of a student. Now, I'm going to read this paragraph again, but I'm going to read it to how it actually works in practice in your K through 12 schools. Other programs discriminate in less direct but equally insidious ways. DEI programs, for example, frequently preference certain racial groups and teach students that white kids bear unique moral burdens that Black kids do not. Such programs stigmatize white kids who belong to white groups based on crude racial stereotypes. That is what social emotional learning is. It is critical race theory. Critical race theory is the theory in social emotional learning, and culturally responsive teaching is the delivery system. This is why your schools, everything in your schools is like this, because it's in the systems and it's in your data collections and the way they say, the way they interpret the data that they collect from your students through the equity lens and say, we need more representation, we need more equity, we need more diversity, that kind of thing. We need to hire teachers that look like them. That's what all that is coming from. The department will no longer tolerate the overt and covert. Now, I'm going to come back to those two words. I love that it was written like this because it's so important that those two words were there. And I'll kind of explain that after I finish the paragraph. The department will no longer tolerate the overt and covert racial discrimination that has become widespread in this nation's educational institution. The law is clear. Treating students differently on the basis of race to achieve nebulous goals such as diversity, racial balancing, social justice, or equity is illegal under controlling Supreme Court precedents. This is a very, very powerful paragraph in this Dear Colleague letter. Now let's go back to overt and covert. When you're looking at accounts like our friends at Parents Defending Education, Lips of TikTok, the work that Chris Rufo does, oftentimes you see overt cases. And it's great that we have those because there's so many Americans or so many parents, likely your own friends and families, that still don't believe that a lot of this stuff is happening. And so, or they don't see the degree, intensity that's happening. So these overt examples are a necessary mechanism and necessary to expose these overt teachers and the lessons and the videos and all those different things. Is a necessary thing for people to understand just how serious this is in K through 12. But the covert, that's where a lot of things that may not seem on its surface. And so this gets to where Courage as a Habit tools come in. And our tools do not just give you the overt, we explain the covert. We explain to you how the system is built on this critical race theory, DEI philosophy, that it's in violation of the civil rights, federal law. When you look at, sometimes when you're looking at things like, oh, it's just more belonging or teachers that look like them, that's more covert. Giving a child a book from Ibram Kendi or things like that, it doesn't seem like, because you're not separating white kids and Black kids, which happens a lot in schools, and saying that white kids look at a Black kid and tell them how you're sorry and be more understanding and have more empathy for them because you're white and they're Black. Those are the overt. But every day your child steps into schools, there's 200 different covert ways that they're pushing this ideology of America systemically racist, and we need to look at marginalized people and reparations and all those different things. Those are the more covert, and our tools really get into that. And I'll come back to that at the end when we're giving you ways to prove it in your schools. But I really wanted to, this paragraph here was great. It's written great. And that overt and covert is really, really important. All students are entitled to a school environment free from discrimination. The department is committed to ensuring those principles are a reality. This letter, okay, so here we go. The last, this 2 paragraphs here, very important because it's about dates. This letter provides notice of the department's existing interpretation of federal law. Additional legal guidance will follow in due course. The department will vigorously enforce the law in equal terms as to all preschool, elementary school, secondary, and post-secondary education institutions, as well as state educational agencies that receive financial assistance, which is basically everyone. The department intends to take appropriate measures to assess compliance with the applicable statutes and regulations based on the understanding embodied in this letter, beginning no later than 14 days from today's date, including anti-discrimination requirements that are a condition of receiving federal funding. This is extremely important. Now, I'm recording this on February 18th. So, because this letter is released on February 14th, what they mean is your institutions have until February 28th to show that they've not just taken it off the website, but removed it from their policies and the way they treat students. Now, I want you to remember that, because when we start talking about action, what you can physically do, that date's going to be important. All right, this final paragraph, so good. It's so well done. All educational institutions are advised to ensure that their policy and actions comply with existing civil rights law, and today none of them are. Cease all efforts to circumvent prohibitions on the use of race by relying on proxies or other indirect means to accomplish such ends. And number 3, you guys ready for this one? This one here is wonderfully written. Cease all reliance on third-party contractors, clearinghouses, or aggregators that are being used by institutions in an effort to circumvent prohibited uses of race. This quite literally covers all your NGOs and nonprofits. Power School, Second Step, Leader in Me, Character Strong, any SEL program. All SEL programs violate this Dear Colleague letter. Every single one. Let me repeat that. Every single social emotional learning vendor violates this. The great majority of your teacher trainings, if not all your teacher trainings, violate this. So this covers your entire schools. If you're in universities, even if you're in high school and your teachers and professors are not passing you, giving you lower grades because your opinions are that of not of a left-wing radical. All that in violation. Last page. Institutions that fail to comply with federal civil rights law may, consistent with applicable law, face potential loss of federal funding. And then they talk about the filing, and we're going to get into that right now. So this is what a Dear Colleague letter looks like. And it is one of those things where so many people don't know about it. So many people don't know what it is. And they certainly don't know how to use it. They think that because a letter's released, even if you do know about it, the school should just comply. They're not going to do that. They're out there transing your kids. They're out there grooming your children. They're out there politically indoctrinating your kids to hate America, to hate you. They're not just going to go, well, we had a good 60-year run on this. I guess we're going to stop doing it. They're not going to do that. That's where you come in. Okay, that's where you come in. All right, my favorite part, offense. Every single school district in all 50 states are in violation. And I kept saying that because I really wanted to drill that into everybody's mind. Every single school district is in violation. Okay. Now you have 180 days from whatever incident you want to report. Okay, whatever, if there's a specific incident, you have 180 days from that incident. That's just the guidelines from OCR. I'm going to come back to BLM week, because BLM week just passed. Now, some of the schools did it, some of them didn't. But if you did BLM week in any way, shape, or form, or you had any BLM, anything BLM in your schools, you are immediately, your school's in violation of this Dear Colleague letter. And I'm going to show you that. But if your school did not do BLM week and they haven't done anything BLM in the last, year, let's say the school year, we will show you there are a million other ways that they violated. But you're going to send an email to your superintendent, principal, and all school board members and ask them if they plan on removing all DEI and race-based topics, lessons, professional trainings, books, and events by February 28, 2025. You will attach both Dear Colleague letters, attach both of them, the February 4th one for the Title IX and the February 14th for DEI. You'll attach it and say, are you going to be massively changing your policies by February 28th? Do you have to send this email before you file your complaint with the OCR? No, you don't have to send it. But it's certainly great to leave a paper trail, because when they open an investigation in your school and you have all these emails, if you have thousands of emails from parents asking them, and then they're, word salad, they deflect, they say, I don't know what it is, and no, we're not doing that. It helps their case if you send the email and make them do that whole word salad dancing that they always do. Okay. So again, you don't have to send the email before filing and requesting an open investigation on your school, but I recommend that you do. Okay. All right, let's get into it. There are 3 ways that you can file with the Office for Civil Rights. The first one is you fill out the online form and then either email it or mail it, snail mail. And I'll show you the link. Again, the link's in the thread below, but I included the link in this presentation as well. The online form is easy. You ask your name and address and all those different things, and it just asks you some basic questions about what you're filing, the incidents and what you're reporting. Super easy to fill out. 15 sections. It's super easy. And it's a online PDF form. Again, you save it, email it, or you print it out, and then you mail it. That's the first way. Second way is you send your own email. You do not have to use their form. You don't have to use that PDF. However, if you send your own free form email, which allows you to attach certain things, which is great, but you still want to look at that PDF form, because they do ask that you still answer the questions in those 15 sections. So feel free to send your own email, but go to that PDF form and look at the questions they ask you so that you can answer it in your free form email. Number 3, the third way is send a letter, but it's exactly the same instruction. If you send a letter, you can write, you can do whatever you want. You can send whatever evidence you want. You can write it however you want and mail it. But again, look at that PDF form so you make sure you answer all the sections. The better you answer those sections, obviously, the easier it is for them to open an investigation. There's going to be a number, call the phone number after a few days to ensure they received your filing. And then I also added a link here, how OCR handles complaints. I'm not going to go through it for the purpose of this video, but I linked it so that you can see for yourself how they handle complaints, just so that you educate yourself. It's important that you know these tools, these weapons at your disposal. Okay. All right. So let's get into the actual links here. So here's the online PDF form. Very easy. You click on it, save it, fill it out, and again, you don't have to use it, but you should look at that PDF form so that you know how to answer, what to put in your email or letter. And there's the email, ocr@ed.gov. And there's the phone number, there's the address. Okay. So let's get into BLM week, and then we'll get into, if you don't have BLM week, using one of our tools to prove that your school's in violation. This toolkit is from the NEA, the largest teachers union in the country. This is the version that the Virginia Education Association came up with, but it's the one that the NEA features. Black Lives Matter Week just happened February 3rd to February 11, 2025. If your schools did it, you're done. You file and you get hundreds, if not thousands of parents to file because they're all in violation of this Dear Colleague letter. It's 100% racist and your school should be investigated and they should lose federal funding. But let's get into it. And again, even if you didn't do BLM week, you will recognize these type of values in your school. So that's why this is a great lesson, because even if there was no official Black Lives Matter week, you know your schools are doing something very similar. Not just one day or 1 week, but all year long. I'm going to come down here to page 8. Black Lives Matter at School Guiding Principles. The Black Lives Matter at School movement is guided by the following principles. We seek to expand student understanding of these principles throughout the week of action and the year of purpose. The year of purpose, like I said, it's not 1 day or 1 week. It's all year long, every single day. This is the system in your K through 12 schools and your colleges. Collective value. We are guided by the fact that all Black lives, regardless of sex assigned at birth, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, economic status, ability, disability, education, location, age, immigration status, religious beliefs or disbeliefs matter. None of us are free until we are all free. Boom, immediately it's in violation of both. Okay, both Dear Colleague letters. First one out. BLM, transgender cult. Boom, first one. But if you look at the rest of it, diversity, of course, restorative and transformative justice, trans affirming, disability justice, queer affirming, basically everybody except white. Everybody except white kids, everybody except white people. And probably Asians at this point. So yeah, if you did Black Lives Matter week, that's it. But just to drive this point home, and again, even if you didn't do Black Lives Matter week, this is what your schools are doing. So let's take a look at what they're teaching kindergartens to 2nd grade and then 3rd to 5th grade. This lesson, and then they link to the lesson, okay? And by the way, they're linking to Learning for Justice. If you can see that, Learning for Justice. Learning for Justice is the education arm of the incredibly radical Southern Poverty Law Center. It is one of the most radical anti-American, anti-Constitution organizations that exists in America. And the Learning for Justice is their education arm that provides lessons for schools, for your schools. This is why BLM Toolkit uses their all their lessons. Okay, so just if your schools use anything from Learning for Justice, okay, they're in violation, 100%. Okay, 110%. Some of your schools might be also using a older version, which is called Teaching Tolerance. Same thing. They just rebranded and called it Learning for Justice, but Teaching Tolerance was their original name from the Southern Poverty Law Center. So anything that your schools, any policies, anything that your schools use, and they're naming that, okay, Teaching Tolerance or Learning for Justice, they're immediately in violation of the this federal law and then this Dear Colleague letter. This lesson, the second in the series, encourages students to think and talk openly about the concept of beauty, particularly as it overlaps with the issues of race and racial identity. Bang, that's it. In violation. Send that in, open investigation, and have thousands of parents do it. Let's say you're not doing BLM week. Here's a tool. And again, almost every one of our tools can fit this. I wouldn't say every single one, but the great majority of it. But we're going to show you one where you can use immediately to see if your schools are in violation of this Dear Colleague letter. So I want everyone to go to courageasahabit.org, courageasahabit.org, and go down and click on school counselors. This is our campaign called Behind Closed Doors, and expose them for exactly what they are. We went to their conferences, their webinars, seminars, training sessions, videos, PowerPoints. We even took their certification exam. Yes, we absolutely did take their certification exams. I do recommend that you look at all the items that we put out because that really teaches you what mental health really means in your schools. But for the purpose of this taking advantage of the Dear Colleague letter, I would say behind closed doors 1 and 2 is pretty much all you need. Okay, 1 and 2. If you really want to, get a little deeper into it, look at behind closed doors 4. Okay, 1, 2, and 4. But 1 and 2, more than enough. Once you understand how ASCA counselors are trained, go to your school website or your policies and look at what's the model that your mental health initiatives are patterned after. What's the ethics statements? What's the model they use to inform your mental health initiatives in your schools? And it will highly likely be the American School Counselor Association, ASCA. As soon as you see ASCA, they are in violation. Dear Colleague letter, because everything ASCA puts out is either transgender cult ideology and or critical race theory, anti-white, equity, all that. So I bring you back to the first thing I said. Please stop saying that President Trump is going to fix it, but rather start thinking and saying President Trump is giving us the tools to fix it. As much as these terrible people in your schools hate President Trump and Elon and Doge and whatever they're doing, as much as they fear them, you know who they fear more? You guys, parents. Why do you think they've spent years telling you it's not happening? Some people are still saying that. It's February 2025. They're still trying to tell you it's not happening. The reason why they tell you this is because they want you to stand down. They want you to just go, okay, maybe it is right wing, maybe it's conspiracy theories, it's not that bad. They tell you this because they cannot take it if thousands of parents, millions of parents start to understand not only is it happening, but it's happening every day and it's happening systemically in all school districts. If thousands of parents per school district start filing these OCRs, they're done. It's over because they're in violation of it. There's going to be lawsuits, loss of federal funding. They've been doing it for years. They can't get away from it. So they keep telling you it's not happening, hoping, praying that you don't wake up. So we're giving you the tools because you as parents can do so many things that Courage as a Habit can't do because you have access to things that we don't. Most of what we get from whistleblowers, from parents. Now, we know how to use that information, maybe in a way that the average person may not have the inclination or the time to do it, but all things being equal, you parents have a lot more access than we do. You can get into your children's Chromebook. You obviously can get into the different policies. You have your own login to parent portals. That's where all these things lie. Even if the schools are starting to scrub it from the website publicly, which a lot of school districts are, they can't scrub it from their policies because it's the entire system. The entire system is critical race theory. The entire system is DEI. And again, all the links that I shared is going to be in the thread below. Please don't sit on the sidelines. Don't sit on the sidelines and wait for someone to protect your kids. You got to do it. And the schools are fearing the hell out of you guys. So as we always remind everybody, if you don't stand up for your children today, they will live on their knees tomorrow. Again, I'm Alvin Louie from Courage as a Habit, and I will see you next time.